Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing good. So today I'm going to be showing you how to draft the bodice pattern of this dress, that is the off shoulder. All right, the other parts will come later, but today we're just going to talk about the bodice. So if this is your first time on this channel, thank you for stopping by, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always coming back. Please subscribe to my channel. Let's get to it. These are the measurements that I'll be using to draft the pattern. I've already written them down, and then as we go along, I'll be mentioning them to you. So just to make this tutorial fast, I've already drawn out the horizontal lines, the chest line, the bust point line, the under bust line, and then the waist line. All right. So what I did in order to get the measurement, that is from the shoulder to the chest, the bust point, the under bust, and the waistline, was that I asked the client how low she wanted the off shoulder to be. Okay, so she said about 5 inches was enough. So I measured 5 inches outside the paper. So if you're working on your fabric as well, you should do the same. Measure the amount of fabric that you want to take off. That measurement, measure it outside your fabric or outside your paper. Place that measurement right on the baseline. So I place the 5-inch mark on that red line. To get the chest line, the measurement is your arm side divided by 2. So 18 divided by 2, that is 9. I measured 9 inches. For the bust point, shoulder to bust point is 9.5. I marked 9.5 right there. For the under bust, shoulder to under bust is 13. I marked 13. And then for our waist, shoulder to waist is 15. And then I marked 15. Okay, so here I'm putting inscriptions to let you know that this is the front pattern and this is the center front. So I am going to start from the bust line. Our bust span is 7 inches. 7 inches divided by 2. I'm going to mark 3.5 inches on that line, and then I'll go to the waistline and mark 3.5 inches as well, and then I'll draw it into a straight line. So in order to create a cup for the bust, we are going to take in some darts at the under bust line and then the waistline. So you need to know how busty your client is, okay, whether the client really needs a huge cup or not. So you just don't take in whatever amount of dart. If you take in a lot of dart, you're going to have a big cup. And if your client does not need a big cup, it is actually going to be so obvious that the cup is in excess. So for me, on the under bust line, I am taking in 1 inch on both sides, okay? And then on the waistline, I am taking in 0.75 inch on both sides, and then I'll connect the lines. After connecting the lines, I'm going to mark 1 inch downwards from the bust point line, and then I'll connect the under bust mark to this new point. By coming down by 1 inch, we are simply giving the bust more room. Now let us go to the top part of the bodice. For the bust span, you remember that I marked 3.5 inches, right? So I'm going to add 1 inch to 3.5 inches. That gives me 4.5 inches. And then on that baseline, the top line, I'm going to mark 4.5 inches. After marking the 4.5 inches, I'm going to connect the bust point line, all right, to that new mark, just like this. After doing that, from the bust point line, I'm going to mark 1 inch upward, just like we did by marking 1 inch downward. We're going to mark 1 inch upward as well, and then you make a mark. Like I said earlier, the reason for doing this is just to avoid pointy edges at the bust point, and then to give the bust some room because it is curved and not pointed. So at both sides of the line I marked up there, I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides. The reason for doing this is to do an upper bust tightening, okay, because we don't want the clothes to be gaping after sewing, after wearing it rather. So we have to mark 1 inch on both sides, and then you connect it to the 1 inch mark that we made earlier, just like this. After doing this, the next thing we are going to do is to mark our horizontal measurements. Let's start with the bust measurement. So my client's bust measurement is 37 inches, but I added 1 inch for ease allowance. Mind you, when I'm measuring my client, I measure them firmly. I do not add any allowance while measuring. I only had an allowance after measuring. So bust measurement is 37, but I added 1 inch for ease. So that's 38. 38 divided by 4, that gives me 9.5 inches. So I placed my tape measure on the center front. I'm actually measuring on the chest line, guys. So I measured 9.5 inches and then I made the mark. All right. So now to the waistline. My client's waist measurement is 30 plus 1 inch for his, that is 31. 31 divided by 4, that is 7.75. And then remember that we have already taken in some darts. We have already taken in 0.75 inch on both sides. So 0.75 times 2, that gives me 1.5. So I added 1.5 to 7.75, and that is 9.25 inches. I hope you understand. So I am going to measure 9.25 inches and then I'll make a mark. So that was what I did there. After making the mark, I joined both points together. So now let us come to the top part. Knowing well that the top part is not going to have a shoulder, we need something to at least join our bodice to hold it on the body. All right, so now we are going to need the across front measurement. So for my client, her across front measurement is 11 inches. 11 divided by 2, that is 5 inches. But remember that I have already taken in 2 inches that on the top part, so I'll add 2 inches to 5 inches, that is 7. I'm going to measure 7 inches, make a mark, and then connect it to the chest line, and that is going to give me the armhole. So the next thing we are going to do is this. You need to determine how low you want the center front to be, or how low your client wants our center front to be. My client wants our center front to be 7.5 inches. So I'm going to place my 5-inch mark on the baseline, that red line, and then I'll mark 7.5 inches. All right, I'll make a mark. So she actually wants the lace that will be on top to be a normal flat rectangle neck, but she wants the lining to go deeper. Okay, so it's like an illusion. It is going to be like an illusion on that center front part, something like what we have in this picture right now. If you look at the center front, you're going to see that the lace covers everything, but the lining goes deeper. So she wants to show some cleavage. That is the effect that she wants, but she wants it to be covered. All right, so I'm not going to cut out this 2-inch mark just yet. I'm going to use it to cut the lace, and when I'm ready to cut the lining, I am going to cut out that 2-inch to make a straighter neck. All right, cut it out, and then I'll cut out the lining. So the last thing that I am going to do on this pattern is to add seam allowances all around. So for the sides, usually I had 1.5 to 2 inches, and I do that in order to be safe, so that, for example, if my clients get bigger, there will be an allowance to do the adjustments. Okay, so for the bottom part, the waistline, I had 1 inch seam allowance, and then for the armhole and the top part, I had a 0.5 inch seam allowance. So at the center front of the lace, I don't want it to be just flat, so I am going down by 1/2 inch, and then I'll blend it into the darts. Now we can start with the back pattern. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to mark out 1 inch for zipper allowance. Draw that into a straight line. After that, I am going to mark out the measurement. So I'll put my 5-inch mark on the baseline, that red line, and then I'll mark the chest line, the bust point line, the under bust line, and the waist line, just like we did for the front, and then I'm going to draw them into a straight line. So to mark the darts for the back, I am going to measure 3.5 inches on the waistline and the bust point line. Remember that the 3.5 inches are bust span divided by 2, and then I'll draw it into a straight line. So on both sides of the line, because it is the back and it does not have a bust, I am going to measure 0.75 inch on both sides. Now to the top, which is the baseline, I will add 1 inch to 3.5 inches, just like we did for the front, and then I'm going to connect it to the bust line, just like this. So in order to do the back tightening as well, because we do not want the back to be gaping, right, I am going to take 0.5 inch on both sides of the line, all right, and then I'm going to connect the darts just like this. So if you would notice, for the back we are not going up or down by 1 inch like we did for the front, because the back does not have a bust. Now to the waist measurement. The waist measurement is 31 divided by 4, that is 7.75, plus 1.5 for the dart that we took, that is 9.25. So I marked 9.25 on the waistline. So on the chest line, the bust measurement is 38. 30 divided by 4, that is 9.5. So, but you would notice that because of the dart that we constructed at that point, we have taken in about 0.25 inches. So you're going to measure whatever you have at that point. So when I measured, I had 0.25 inch. So now I'm going to add 0.25 inch to 9.5, which is the original bust measurement. So I'm going to mark 9.75 on the chest line. For the top part, which is going to be the across back, the client across back is 12. 12 divided by 2, I have 6. The dart allowance that I have is 1. So I am going to add 6 to 1 inch, that is 7. So I'll mark 7 inches and then I'll connect it to the chest line, which will give us the armhole. The client wants the back to be a little lower. So I am going to measure 1.5 inches downward from the baseline and then I'll make a mark. So after doing that, I'm going to connect the armhole point to the new back neckline, just like this. If you look at the dart legs, if you measure it, you see that one is longer than the other. So like in our previous tutorials, what we usually do is that we measure the dart leg, find the difference, and then we add the difference to the one that is shorter. So in this case, this dart leg is actually shorter by 0.25 inches. So I am adding 0.25 to that dart leg, and then I will reconnect it to the back neckline, the 1.5. The reason for doing this is just to ensure that while we are sewing, our darts match. Okay. So now we are going to add seam allowances all around, just like we did for the front. So for the back as well, I'm adding 1.5 to 2 inches to the sides. For the waistline, I am adding 1 inch. For the armhole and the neckline, I'll be adding 0.5 inch. In order to prevent the zipper area from bulging, I'm going to mark 0.5 inch inward, just like this, and then I'll reconnect the zipper allowance to the bust point line. Okay, so after doing that, I'm going to remark the 1 inch allowance for the zipper and then connect it like this. Before you cut out the pattern, you need to fold your zipper allowance inward underneath the main pattern before you cut it out. And the reason for doing this is because we slanted the back, so you have to do this by the time you want to cut out a pattern. So now I am going to put inscriptions all over my pattern so that when I cut it out, I am not going to be confused as to which one is what. After cutting out the pattern, I used the pattern to cut out the fabric and the lining, and then I added half an inch seam allowance to the top part and then the part that I cut out. That part. I hope you understand. So I also drafted the sleeve. I wanted the hem of the sleeve to be on this bottom side of the fabric. So after folding the fabric, I put the sleeve pattern on it, and then I realized that it was not going to be enough. So I called the client to ask if I should go ahead with something else, and then she gave me a yes. So I'm not going to show you how I drafted the sleeve because I did not end up using it. All right, so let me show you how I drafted the one in the thumbnail. So for sleeves like this, you need 3 measurements: the across front measurement, the across back measurement, and then the round shoulder measurement. So my client's round shoulder measurement is 42 inches, the across front measurement is 11 inches, and the across back measurement is 12 inches. So I am going to add across front plus across back, that is 11 plus 12, that is 23. So I'm going to deduct 23 from the round shoulder measurement, so that will be 42 minus 23, and that gives me 19 inches. Okay, so 19 inches is what I have left to divide between the two arms, the right and the left arm. I hope you understand. So 19 divided by 2, that gives me 9.5. So that means that I need a sleeve that measures 9.5 for the right arm and another one that measures 9.5 for the left arm. So you know that whenever we are drafting the sleeve, we usually put it on fold. So in order to be able to put it on fold, I need to divide the measurement for one arm, which is 9.5. I need to divide it into 2. So that is 9.5 divided by 2. That gives me 4.75. So I'll be using the measurement of 4.75 to cut the sleeve while on fold, so that when I open it up, it is going to give me the total measurement for one sleeve, which is 9.5. For me, this is the simplest way by which I make my up shoulder sleeves. I will get the pattern that has the armhole and place it on my paper, and then I'm going to trace out the armhole. So you remember that the measurement I got earlier is 4.75, right? So I am going to measure 4.75 in a diagonal way, because the up shoulder is not flat. It's not going to be flat on the neck. So I'll measure 4.75 right there, draw a straight line. After that, you determine the length of your sleeve. So how long do you want it to be? For me, I want it to be about 3 inches. So I'll measure 3 inches downward. Look at the way I placed my tape rule. The tip of my tape rule is actually flat on that line. Let me show you with the ruler. So the edge of my ruler is on that line. It is making a 90 degree. All right. So I am going to mark 3.5 inches, which is the length of my sleeve. Go to the armhole side as well. Mark 3.5 inches. All right. And then I'm going to connect it this way. And there you go. This is your sleeve. This is how I construct sleeves when I'm making up shoulder. So I'm just using this French curve to make the curve a little perfect than what I had earlier. So the next thing is this. Remember that on the pattern, the main pattern, we've already added sewing allowance of 0.5 inch. So on this sleeve pattern as well, I'm going to add 0.5 inches all around, except on the part that I'm going to cut on fold. Okay, so since I'm going to cut the sleeve on fold, I'm not going to add seam allowance to that part that I'll be cutting on fold. So after cutting, this is what the sleeve is going to look like. So let's put it here and see. So you see what I'm talking about. But then I realized that it was kind of too long because it was very close to the armpit area. Can you see? So I reduced the length by 1 inch. All right, and then I cut it out again. So this is my sleeve, and now I'm going to cut it on the fabric. So remember that that part that I wrote fold, okay, you're going to cut it on fold. Please don't forget. So guys, while we were drafting the bodice, remember that I said that the lining will have a cut at the center front, but the lace will not have, so it will be like an illusion. Do you remember? So now I am going to make that cut out on the lining. All right, so I'll be measuring 2 inches down, and then I will cut it on the lining and on the interfacing. So after cutting it out, I tried to arrange it for you to see how it is going to look like. So all the patterns, the front pattern especially, and then the sleeve all together. So this is what it is going to look like. So you see that the lace does not have a cutout. It is only the lining that has a cutout. All right, so the lace will be covering it. So thereafter, what I did was to sew the lining together. Okay, so I actually cut out 2 linings, all right, because the lace is very light, and since I'm going to put an interfacing, there has to be a cover for the lace and a cover for the interfacing. Do you understand? So I actually sewed both linings, the patterns together, and after then I sewed both linings together. So this is what the front pattern is going to look like. So here I'm going to put the interfacing in between the lining. So after doing this, we can continue sewing, and then when you put your lace on it, you see it is perfect. It has a perfect finishing. So thank you very much guys for watching this tutorial. If it has been helpful, please let me know. Drop your comments, share, like, all right, and please subscribe if you have not. And if you have any questions as well, please ask and I'm going to attend to it. So till we see you again, see you next time. Bye.